asked me, he said, why aren't you supposed to sit up front if you're a speaker? And I said, well, that's the people who are coming before LULAC. I'm coming from LULAC. So most of you have heard the news. Domingo just announced it if you hadn't heard it, that they leaked a draft. What does a leaked draft mean? Well, a draft, just like when you're writing anything, is the beginning copy of what your thoughts are. And so it's a hint to us about what's to come. It's not the final version. They haven't voted yet, but it tells us what they're planning. And the plan, according to the draft, is to overturn Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, almost 50 years ago. 3 of the Supreme Court justices, the newest ones, within the past year or so during their confirmation hearings, testified that Roe v. Wade was established law. It was precedent. They lied under oath. 3 Supreme Court justices lied under oath when they said that they believed that Roe v. Wade was precedent and established law. It hasn't passed yet, but we're expecting that they will be voting that way. And how does that affect Texas? It came up in my Facebook memories. We all have that on your Facebook too. Facebook memories comes up. A year ago, Cinco de Mayo, we were on the House floor and we were debating SB 8. SB 8 was called the Heartbeat Bill. Very deceptive name. Supposedly the bill's intention was... Okay. You're not doing a very good job of sneaking, but come on in. Love you too. The Heartbeat Bill, the idea behind the name was that once a heartbeat was detected, then the pregnancy should continue. Our speaker on our side, for us, was Representative Donna Howard out of Round Rock. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Donna Howard. She's not from our area. She's our chair of the Women's Health Caucus, and she's the person who is our main speaker on these bills because she comes from a background of being a nurse. So she comes from a special area of authority and can speak from that, and the rest of us cannot. And she said that this bill does not make sense to the Texas Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. They say there's not detecting a heartbeat at that few weeks. What you're detecting is electric impulses. I'm not a doctor, but I am one of those who believes in doctors and scientists, unlike the other party, that it's not a heartbeat that you're detecting. So that's one fallacy in the heartbeat bill. We have a front mic and a back mic at the House, so when you're laying out the bill and presenting it to be passed, those people stand at the front mic. So the Republican women were there. Strategic, right? Optics have women up there talking about the heartbeat bill. I sit by the back mic. The back mic is where you ask questions and contest the bill from. So we were lined up at the back mic. Representative Howard was speaking, and she was asking them questions that had to do with conception and their knowledge of conception. The Republican colleague who was authoring the bill could not answer any of the questions. She kept answering, I'm not advised. They'd ask her another question, I am not advised. She said it so many times, I turned around to my colleague behind me, who was the chair of the House Republican Caucus, and said, she's not advised. Did her mom not have the sex talk with her, or what? What does that mean? But I'm not advised is kind of like code on the House floor for when you don't want to answer something because you know the answer will cause you problems if it goes into the record legally. So repeatedly she answered, I'm not advised, I'm not advised. They would not answer our questions about how this heartbeat bill worked. The same was also true for voter suppression, but that's another topic that I was not asked to talk about today, so I won't digress. But I'm not advised is something we hear a lot when they don't want to answer the question. They know the answer. They just know that they tell the truth will get them in trouble, and we'll use it in legislative record and so on. Over and over again, she said, I'm not advised. So, but as you might imagine, even though we fought against it, even though we said that it was wrong, the bill was wrong, and been ill-advised, that the doctors don't agree with it. Obstetricians did not agree with it. Gynecologists did not agree with it. The bill passed, as you might imagine, along partisan lines. So we have that bill that reduced access for anyone who's past 6 weeks. Some women don't even know that they're expecting. They're already past 6 weeks when they find out. So that's just a total prohibition for them. The other thing that bothered me about the heartbeat bill was there were no exceptions. No exceptions for rape. No exceptions for incest. You know, if it's a 14-year-old girl raped by her uncle, no exception. No exception for a woman's health. If her life is in danger, if she gives birth, if she will die, there's no exception for the life of the mother. No exceptions if the baby inside is no longer a viable fetus. Can you imagine that? I cannot. No longer a viable fetus. And that mother's told, you have to carry that dead fetus to term and give birth to a dead baby. You cannot do anything about it before. I just can't imagine a woman having to do that. No exceptions. But anyway, so that's the bill that we have. So since then, abortions in Texas have dropped like 80%, which is the result that they were hoping for. Appointments in other states, neighboring states like Louisiana, Oklahoma, and around, 80% of their appointments are from Texas women. So that's the effect that it's had, where women in Texas are going to other states. One woman drove from South Texas, took her 12 hours to get to her appointment. Not all women can do that. These bills don't affect rich women. And most rich women are white women. This bill doesn't affect rich women. It affects poor women, and it disproportionately affects minority women. In addition to this heartbeat bill, we have, as part of it, we have a bill that's called the trigger bill, trigger law. And so what does trigger law mean? Have you heard that phrase? The trigger law means that if the Supreme Court, when they were in anticipation, that the Supreme Court makes a decision about Roe v. Wade, and they make the decision that it becomes a state right to decide, that they return it back to the states, that the states have the right to decide. They won't necessarily say, I don't think, Domingo, that it's illegal to return it. Maybe probably one way that we return it back to the states to decide. That's a popular decision. So Texas has already decided. There won't be any waiting. They passed a bill last legislative session that said when the Supreme Court decides on these Roe v. Wade issues that are coming before the court, if they decide that they're going to reverse Roe v. Wade, Texas will automatically, on that trigger, that Texas, it'll be illegal in Texas, that there will be none. So that's what the trigger law part means. So, this is an attack on women's health, women's reproductive health. I heard some interesting statistics. I've heard that 100% of unintended pregnancies are caused by men. That 100% of them are caused by men. Another interesting statistic, I think, is that 0% of men give birth. So that leaves women asking, why are men making these decisions over what women do with their bodies? It should not be a decision up to men unless the man is her doctor, her priest, her family member, her husband, that the woman wants to consult with. But it should not be a politician. So we'll wait and see what happens on that, but that's the update. Hopefully I've covered everything well for you in a short amount of time on what's happening with that issue in Texas.
You got a couple of questions?
Okay, I thought maybe you called on Wanda.
Mary, two things. I'm just wondering if that man is going to be charged with murder like everybody else, even because he has infected the woman. On a more serious note, Terry, you know that I work closely with the homeless and domestic violence and human trafficking. Many of you in this room know there are 432, mostly females, every single night in Dallas, ages 13 through 17, that are pimped out, usually by the mother, because of drug use favors or the boyfriend favors or whatever. But imagine that. 432 girls ages 13 through 17 in Dallas every night being pimped out. And we have no way to make sure that those girls do not get impregnated, because many of them do. And who's speaking for these girls? Who is their voice? We need something for incest and for rape, and I'm sorry, but these bald-headed white men making decisions for us, I can't. It just does not make sense. And so, Terry, we need to educate everybody to the facts of life. And we don't like to entertain that thought, but it's true. So we need to be voices for those girls. Thank you.
I had a bill, I filed a bill last session that said that we should allow pregnant moms to seek help with substance abuse during a pregnancy without fear of having their baby taken away from them. Right now, if a woman's expecting and she has a substance abuse issue and she goes and seeks help, it's put on her record and it's used against her, that her baby might be taken from her. So then what's a mother supposed to do in that situation? If I seek help with my substance abuse issue to try to protect my fetus, protect my baby, I'm risking having my baby taken from me so that they don't seek the help. That's a bad situation to put a woman into, right? You seek substance abuse help, you might lose your baby. You don't, you might lose your baby. So that bill did pass, can you believe it? Bipartisan support in the House, but it died in the Senate. So much for pro-life.
You have a question right here.
Oh, okay, that's why.
Terry, thank you very much for that information. I just want to ask, what if we dominate what if we dominate in the elections and get the top three positions that would be Democratic? Would that change the situation on the trigger thing?
Oh, I don't know about changing the situation on the trigger thing. I haven't looked forward enough to that to think about that yet. That's a good question. But what I can say in answer to what you said is that they can gerrymander our state rep districts. They can gerrymander the state senator districts. They can gerrymander congressional districts. They cannot gerrymander the entire state of Texas.
That's right.
This is our big chance where we can elect, as you said, at least like the top three. We change who the governor is. We change who the lieutenant governor is. The lieutenant governor, as you know, presides over the Senate. This will make a big difference. So I encourage everybody to vote and help make those kind of changes. We have the power, we have the numbers within the state of Texas to make those big changes at the state level, and that's why it's so important. Don't get discouraged. Go vote. Make those changes so that when our bills hit the governor's desk, they don't get vetoed. Can you believe that the DFW airport came to Rafael Anchia and me, since we both represent parts of Irving, and asked us that we would present a bill about no guns on the tarmac. No guns on the tarmac? We don't have a bill about that? They said, no, we got plenty of bills in the, about the terminal and plenty of bills about guns on the plane. We have nothing that says it's illegal to be running around the tarmac with a gun or a rifle. We said, oh wow, that sounds like a no-brainer. Yeah, we filed it. Passed through the House easily, but not unanimously. Passed through the Senate easily, but not unanimously. And when it got to the governor's desk, he vetoed it. I think we have enough bills on guns, he said. This year the bill was filed again with Republican names on it, and when it made it to the desk, he signed it. That's very petty politics, because then for that 2-year period, we didn't have that bill in place for the DFW airport. It'll make a big difference for our bills and our laws if we have a governor and lieutenant governor who are Democrats. So help us do that.
Thank you. All right. We've been joined by Michelle Wong, chair of the DART. Michelle. And my favorite Dallas County Commissioner, Dr. Edward Garcia. And Benton Jones, candidate for state representative, District 100, is here in the house. All right, our next speaker is a graduate from Rhodes College. She got her JD from University of Houston. She was a former past Democratic Party chair for Bowie County and past current state representative for District 100, I believe, right? And she is running for Congress. She is in a runoff for Congressional District 30, which covers most of Oak Cliff and northern parts of Dallas. It's going to begin with Jasmine Crockett.
Man, listen, it's hard to go after the incomparable Terry Mesa, who does such a great job at breaking things down and telling us about all the nonsense that happens this past session. I am happy to say that Terry is one of my closest friends down in Austin, and she's standing with me. I remember when I was calling around to get early support to run for Congressional District 30, and Terry signed up immediately and said that she had my back, and I appreciate that. So I am State Representative Jasmine Crockett, and I stood before you probably just about 2 years ago, almost to the day, asking for your support and your grace and your prayers as I was seeking to become the State House Rep for HD 100. And when I tell you that I was fighting for HD 100, I had 5 opponents. We went into a runoff. We ended up with COVID. Didn't know what I was going to do. We were outspent 5-1. And ultimately, we won that seat by 90 votes. And I tell people, when we write the story will be the difference of 90. Because so many people thought there really wasn't a big difference. We've got 2 educated black women. They're fighting it out. They're duking it out. They'll go down there. It's a safe Democratic seat. But what they didn't realize is nothing is safe in the state of Texas. And we needed very strong, trained voices down in Austin. And I believe that's what I contributed. Terry will tell you, I'm sure one day, when we really talk about the quorum break, about all of the politics that were going on. That quorum break wasn't easy, y'all. This wasn't a matter of Democrats all lining up and saying, hey, we're all gonna get out of here. I want y'all to know that. Just like we see that there are divisions on the federal level, it took a lot to get out of here. But let me tell you, the attacks were coming every day. When I talked to senior members, they would say, you know what, normally in session we get one crazy bill. We may get the bathroom bill, or we get one thing that they go after. But instead, it was like we were drinking from a fire hose, because it was one thing after another. Terry just talked to you about repo rights. We had no idea at that point in time. She talked about the back mic. I got on the back mic because I'm a trained attorney. And in my mind, I said, we've got Roe v. Wade. And the bill author is a lawyer. So I said, do you know what Supreme Court precedence is? And I tell people now the egg was on my face, not hers. Because I thought she didn't know what she was doing. Because I said, we have Roe v. Wade. This is unconstitutional in my mind. Clearly, I was the one that was wrong. I never thought that Texas would set the precedence for vigilantes to be able to go after women and their providers and their Uber drivers simply because they needed to take care of their health. And I say women, and I say that very loosely because I'm talking about all people. Because you do understand that we have children that are raped in this state every single day. We have children that have been a victim and then a victim again. The very people that were supposed to protect them. So let me be clear. We had a story that came out recently. We had a child that was victimized because she was trafficked, as has been mentioned. As she was trafficked, she then was put into our CPS system. After she got into our CPS system, she then was raped. And then she was impregnated. And then because of our laws, she was forced to carry that child. Now you tell me if we should live in a state that doesn't protect our most vulnerable, our children. But that's the state that we're living in. So let me tell you how this all connects. When we went to DC, I said if we don't stand up for democracy itself, then we don't stand up for anything. So we broke norm. We raised the awareness on voting rights. But if we see what's going on in this country, we have to understand that we are in a constitutional crisis right now. It's not just voting rights that are on the block. It's not just repo rights that are on the chopping block. It's LGBTQ rights. And as you saw what our governor did this week, did y'all see what he did? Because I need y'all to understand that we all got to stand together. What he decided to do is he wants to go after undocumented children now. And he said that he wants to see if he can challenge Supreme Court precedents as it relates to schools being required to feed undocumented children. That's what he wants to do. So let me be clear. This fight at this point in time is just not limited to the state of Texas. Once we finally got outside the house that I call the bubble, the pink dome, we realized that we were setting the stage for the entire country and running them the wrong way. Have y'all heard of the crazy state of Florida? And Governor DeSantis that seemingly is following after Governor Abbott, or they're in a competition to see who can get to the bottom first? That's what we're dealing with. And Oklahoma was brought up. Right now, Oklahoma is actually taking a lot of the abortion care from the state of Texas. But guess what their state house just did? It's now going to be punishable for up to 10 years if a doctor performs an abortion. That was the bill that they're pushing forward in Oklahoma. So as we can see, Texas has been the epicenter. We've got Missouri following us. We've got Tennessee that's saying it's okay to rape a little girl. They're saying that's okay. You can go ahead and marry children that are under the age of 18. I don't know where these people came from. I don't know what their goal is, but I believe in the promise of America. I believe that we are to be better. I believe that everybody should have an opportunity in this country. And so that's exactly why I signed up to run for Congress. Let me tell you, I hate politics, and some people tell me I'm not supposed to say that. But I do. It tends to be a lot of games, but right now we can't afford anybody that's gonna play games because we're losing people every single day. Because politicians are making bad decisions for real people. They are treating people as chess pieces in a game. This is not what politics should be. Politics should always be about the people and the voice of the people and the will of the people. And I'm telling you right now, the bills that are being passed do not comply with the will of the people. And so I have a track record. Terry brought up a good point, because there's been a lot of talk about it. She brought out a good point. A bill that had Democratic names couldn't get passed. This was a good bill. Actually, it did get passed. My apologies. It got vetoed by the governor. The Republicans run the House, they run the Senate, and they run the governor's mansion. We have just the opposite on the federal level, so I don't know why we're struggling right now. But that's a story for another day. One thing that Vincent will have to learn when he gets down there to take my seat is this. I had more bills filed than any other freshman. And then I started calling them out for what they were doing wrong. And they told me, we're going to kill every single one of your bills. Because freshmen are supposed to be seen and not heard. Well, I lived on the back mic because I was duly elected just like every other person sitting down there in the House. And I wasn't going to be silent when I was elected to be a voice for my district. But let me tell you something, there's a lot of performative politics. And so there was at least one Republican, there were a few, that were on my side. And so the biggest bill that got passed for HD 100 is funding for Fair Park. Now we all know that we need to show some love to Fair Park. Fair Park is a staple in the city of Dallas. So we got funding to the tune of about $70 million. We also got funding to actually start a mental health hospital, which is something that Dallas has needed forever. That is HD 100 that funding is going to. Other people carry my bills. Now, I'm a bill author on those bills, but they had to carry it as their primary bill just because my name was on it, it was going to go down. Because that's what they do in Austin. Austin is broken, DC is broken, but we as a people have to show that we are not broken. And that they will not break us, and that we will be unified. Please understand, repo rights is just the beginning. We got to buckle up. We got to come together if we are going to save this country. It's going to be up to all of us. We've got to get into our communities. We have to understand what their issues are. And we have to say, you've got to go vote and this is why. We've got to educate them. You have the power. The power comes from the people. It's not a top-down situation. It is a bottom-up. So I want you to be encouraged. I want you to understand your power. I want you to get out there. I want you to advocate. I want you to tell the stories of the Terry Mesas that are in the Texas House. We've got to increase our voter participation in Dallas County. If we increase our voter participation in our county, we can mute the voices of some of those in rural Texas that are holding us down and keeping us red. They came after your voting rights because the demographics in the state of Texas look more like California than they do, say, Mississippi. We have the numbers. We're a majority minority state. Let's stand up, let's stand together, let's fight. I know I spent a lot of time talking about what we can do together, but that's why I'm running. The theme of my campaign is Jasmine for us, because I'm not fighting for me. This isn't my seat. I told the people when I was elected to represent HD 100 that wasn't my seat. It is the people's seat. And for those that don't understand why the Congresswoman waited so long to get out of her seat, she was protecting the seat. This is something that Domingo knows about. In redistricting, we have redistricting late. If I would have vacated my seat early, or if she would have vacated her seat early, they would have been obliterated. We stayed in our seats until the lines were final because we loved our districts, because we were fighting for them. I was sitting in my seat and they tried to obliterate it. I have what is considered a legacy seat. It was the first African American seat in Dallas County. Do you know that they tried to take it down so that it was going to be an Anglo seat? Y'all know that? And I was sitting there in the seat. And I had to fight for it. And that's what I did. And I knew there was a chance that the Congresswoman was going to retire. I knew there was a chance that she was going to say that I was the one that she wanted in that seat, but it didn't matter. Because when I went down there, I said I was fighting for my district. That's the type of representation we need up and down the ballot. It's people that aren't looking to be called a king or a queen, but people that understand that we are public servants. And we are here to serve the people, and the seat belongs to the people, and we need to be their voice. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Yes.
One question. Yes, since you're coming from Texas, I have a Texas question.
Okay.
Is there a way you can advise our next representative to go in and mandate questions on all the tests given all the students in Texas about redistricting so they study it?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yep.
I don't know if we can issue that kind of mandate, but we can definitely try. I will say this. It was a very difficult decision for me to decide that I was going to run for Congress. I really do love my district, and I love the people of it, and House district is a lot smaller than a congressional district. Our House districts were 177,000 people, congressional district is 766,000 people, which makes it a lot more difficult for you to be as connected to your actual constituents. But I care about my district, so one thing that I have done is my team has actually started to put together bill binders on every single bill that I filed. It has everything laid out so that if the person coming behind me absolutely wants to refile any of those bills, it has everything that they need. It's got the witnesses, it's got all the contact information to make it easy so that hopefully if there's something in there that they really like, that they feel like would absolutely be great for the district, they can do that. I will encourage, hopefully Benson, I will encourage whoever it is that's coming behind me to not be afraid. File whatever you believe is right. Let somebody else shut you down. Don't you shut yourself down, because we're down there to fight for the people. I absolutely believe that there's a lot more education that needs to be done on redistricting. This is something that hopefully I'll have a chance to continue to do, because we will be in this fight. I'm currently in litigation, for those of you that don't know. I'm in litigation over the lines right now. Myself, along with Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, along with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and Congressman Al Green. We're in litigation right now trying to get these lines right. Because what they did is, while Congressional District 30 is still an African-American seat, they used the district to divide the voices of minorities over in Tarrant County. That's what they wanted to do. And so they used us, and then what they did is they took Colin Allred's district, and he grabbed up a lot of what was CD30. So they packed Congressman Allred's district by grabbing up lots of minorities instead of allowing his district to kind of remain like it is. It's continuing to trend in the right way. And so they wanted to take Highland Park and things like that to help Beth Van Dyne, who barely won her seat. And so they packed her district, and it looks crazy with a bunch of like red areas, I'll say.
All right, Hector?
First of all, thank you for being here. My question is this. There is either in the education code or either the Secretary of State issued a regulation that the superintendent or his designee register every student in the high schools of Texas to become registered voters. However, over the years they've been increasing, but not adequately. How do you think we can adjust that so that it becomes either a state law that will impose upon the schools and the superintendent as the top authority administratively be responsible and maybe even a fine if they do not do and comply with that, either that rule or state law?
No, Hector, that's a great question. That does exist, but there's a lack of enforcement, as you're pointing out. And due to the lack of enforcement, it just very rarely gets done. I think that this is one of those things that, Democrats, we really couldn't get hearings on any election bills at all. They wouldn't give them to us. I filed maybe 15 election bills. Wanted to make sure we had same-day voter registration. Wanted to make sure we had electronic voter registration. Wanted to make sure that we went back to straight party ticket voting. Wanted to make sure that those that were going to turn 18 by the time that the primary, by the time the general came around, that they could actually vote in the primary. Because if you're going to be 18 by the general, you probably should have a say-so in the primary. So we filed a number of bills. I filed a bill for apportionment as well, so that if, say, Congressional District 30 voted democratically, that would be one pickup for whoever was running for president. I thought that was a way to help us out because everyone complains about the Electoral College. And so I wanted to apportion the state of Texas in a way that complied with the congressional districts. We could not get hearings on any bills that we filed. The Republican chair of elections only allowed Republicans to have hearings, and so that would be one of those things. But one of the things that I tell people is that, while we're elected to be legislators and write laws, we've got to be public servants. And so it's important that we come back and we talk to DISD, we talk to our principals, we talk to our superintendents, and say, hey, we're going to come in with you. This is what it says. Let's do this together. And so I think that that's what it's going to take, at least until we start picking up some seats. And I don't want you to think it's all doom and gloom. They have a little bit more of a difficult time in the Texas House because we have what is called the county line rule. So you have to stay within the county line. if they could go outside the county lines, then they would be happy, right? But the county line rule means that it's harder for them to gerrymander the House. The House is still gerrymandered, I'm not saying it's not, but it's the hardest one to gerrymander right now. And so we still have an opportunity to pick up some seats in Denton County and Collin County because the seats are drawn kind of tightly. And we will be picking one up in Tarrant County as well. And so what I want you to do is understand that while you may live in, say, Terry Mace's district, or you may live in HD 100, we've got to start to understand that this fight is bigger than just our own representative. We've got to start going out and supporting people in other districts because it's going to take all of us. It is a team sport. But when it comes to that specific issue, we've got to get those people that are willing to go out into the schools because right now we just don't have the numbers to get good, smart, reasonable legislation passed. And what they would probably tell us is that there's a bill for that. But that doesn't mean that we can't file the bill. So that's something somebody like Levin can file and let them tell us no.
Ms. Crockett, there's 4.5 million students in the state of Texas in 1,100 districts. There's 4.5 million students in the public schools of Texas in 1,100 districts. So you can imagine if thereabout maybe 20% or so could be voting age. So you can imagine the numbers that are there that can sway an election, particularly in the state. That's why I bring up the point.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And when you have 60 to 65% Hispanic students and everything, now you see where they're targeting us of not registering to vote.
Yeah.
And but yet they're going to register for the selective service. You know.
No,
So their priorities are kind of mixed.
No, it's interesting because one thing that I would consistently say is that the Republicans love to use our bodies just for their advantage. So when I say that, what they're doing is they love to use us for their counts, right? So they use the numbers to make sure that they can get their numbers to where they need them to be. But that's it, right? And so we saw it even when we looked at prison gerrymandering, which is another thing that I filed against, right? Because in rural Texas, what people don't understand is that these districts are really situated in a funny way. The majority of our prisons, they're in rural Texas. The majority of our prisons are black and brown, right? So when you look at the map, it looks like you've got representatives in rural Texas that have way more diverse districts than they do because they count them where they impersonate them. They don't count them where they actually reside. Your residence is where you intend to return. Nobody intends to stay there, right? And when they need help, let's say somebody is qualified to actually vote, right? If you're qualified to vote because your case has not been finally decided because you're up on appeal, they tell you to write back to your home address and that's where you vote. So they would vote, say, for me at HD 100, but when it comes to getting money, because that's what you get from the census, when it comes to making sure that you got enough people in your district to make sure that you're not losing population, they use black and brown bodies in the prisons. And so they're playing a lot of games, y'all. I can get so deep on some of the things that they're doing. But you're absolutely right. They don't want to give us the resources though, because they're going to use our bodies for the census count. And now the governor says, but I don't want to feed those children.
That's right. We're the target.
All right, and just as a reminder, the runoff in the Democratic and Republican primaries is May 24th. May 24th. And Jasmine, early voting starts when?
May 16th through May 20th.
May 16th through May 20th is early vote for the primaries. Another runoff is statewide. I was reading the paper today that our current Attorney General, Ken Paxton, has decided to sue the State Bar of Texas because they're helping possibly illegal aliens. The same day the State Bar is going to sue him for filing a previous lawsuit on the January 6th. So, you know, Ken Paxton has been involved in a lot of voter suppression. He's a guy that has done almost as much as any person I know in America to keep black and brown people from voting. So whoever replaces him is going to have an important role. And our next candidate is trying to replace him, okay? And she is from Brownsville, Texas. She came all the way from the Valle, is from Teresa. And she graduated from Brown University, went to the University of Houston Law School. has worked for the ACLU, and when a young Latina immigrant was pregnant and had to decide to choose or not to choose to have a baby, she's a teenager. She was the one that represented that young lady, and she won. Let's give a big hand to Rochelle Garza, candidate for Attorney General of the state of Texas.
Thank you guys so much. I'm so impressed by the turnout and by this whole event that you all have the forum to talk about all these issues. I think that's absolutely incredible. I think we need to have Chorizo and Menudos in every city. I would love to see this happen in Brownsville. My name's Rochelle Garza. I'm originally from Brownsville. I'm a fronteriza. I'm a 5th generation Texan, a new mom. I just had a baby 6 weeks ago. My husband's in the back. So blame him. I'm running for Attorney General because, well, this week it's been because I'm angry. Yeah, I'm angry. I'm ready to fight for our families. The only thing I can think about is what's happening to Roe and what that means for all of us and for our rights moving forward. And we see exactly the path that the Republican Party is taking, the GOP, at least on the state, and then how it's impacting the whole national level. But I do want to give you some background on myself and just fully introduce who I am. My parents were both public school teachers. My dad was a farmer. He grew up one of 13 kids, picking cotton and okra in South Texas, and ended up becoming a teacher, met my mom, and became a lawyer, and then a judge at the age of 30. So I come from a family of fighters. I come from a family that values hard work, values community, just like all of you here. I also grew up in a household with a sibling with disabilities, and my brother Robbie required a lot of support. And I learned firsthand how important it is to fight for your family, how important it is to fight for your community, because that's where the strength lies in. And that's why I focused my career on civil rights. That's why I've taken on the cases I've taken on. And just thinking about what's going on with Roe and where we're at, I did represent Jane Doe. It was the only abortion case that Brett Kavanaugh ever heard before he got into the Supreme Court. So it all started in South Texas with this young woman, Jane, who was in an immigration detention center during the Trump administration, denied access to abortion care. We went through the parental consent laws. We got the order that she needed from the state of from a judge, giving her permission to proceed with her abortion decision. And then the Trump administration and Ken Paxton tried to step in and deny her access to abortion care. They held her in prison. They forced her to go to a crisis pregnancy center, have unwanted sonograms, followed around. I mean, they tortured this young woman. And we fought for her. She stood up for her rights, but we, as her attorneys, fought for that young woman. And we made sure that we got her the care she needed, and we had to go through Brett Kavanaugh. Because he made a decision that would have forced her to have a child against her will. And we beat him back, and we went a step further. There is a notice that's named the Garza Notice after my work on that case, after the work that we all put in, and it requires the federal government to let young people in immigration detention know that they have a constitutional right to abortion care. And it was a huge win for abortion rights, for this constitutional right. And of course it was Brett Kavanaugh that ended up going onto the Supreme Court, because he signaled to Trump, hey, this is where I stand on abortion. This is what I'm going to do for you once I get onto the Supreme Court. So, I testified against him in his confirmation hearings. And, we discussed that case, we discussed what happened to Jane, we discussed how important it was to protect this right. And, unfortunately he made it onto the court. But I know what it's like to go up against the federal government that's doing something like this to someone. I know what it's like to win, not just on her behalf, but on behalf of all the young people in immigration detention. And that's what we need right now. We need that in the Attorney General's office. We need to have somebody who's in there that's ready from day one to stand up and to fight for our civil rights, because it's not just abortion care, it's voting rights, it's marriage equality. And it is students. I mean, the Plyer versus Doe is the case that gives undocumented children across the country the right to get educated. And you know, to have a governor who's saying, we need to overturn this, because he sees the writing on the wall. He sees the Supreme Court is going to help him out. And who's going to get those cases to the Supreme Court? Ken Paxton. He's going to do it. Because he's filed 2 cases per month against the Biden administration since Biden took office. And he's challenging the federal government's role and trying to get more power to his position. And it's going to impact all of us. So he not only is under indictment, and he could lose his license, and is under FBI investigation for what happened with his mistress and his donors and all of the things that he's doing wrong. But he is harming us. He is harming Texas families. He is not a people's attorney. And this office is supposed to be for the people of Texas. The Attorney General is supposed to be there for us, representing our interests, fighting for civil rights, for voting rights, for LGBTQ protections, for consumer protections, for having accountability for what happened to the power grid failure, to hold companies accountable when they take advantage of workers. You know, you can't put food on the table if you don't have, if you're not paid well. And if you can't, and if you're a single parent and you need to get child support, and the AG is not there helping you out, I mean, how are you going to make things work? That's what the AG is supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be taking care of all of those issues, the bread and butter issues, all the things that underpin our daily lives, our families' lives, and he has got to go. And he will go. Because there is a path, and I know this has been mentioned earlier, we have the demographics. The state of Texas is 60% people of color. People that look like in this room. Latinos are almost 40% of the population. And yet, we don't have representation statewide. I'm the only Latina in the AG race. And it was important to me to jump in there, because how are we going to bring voters out? We need to mobilize our base, and we need to expand who turns out to vote. And we cannot win Texas without Latinos. We cannot. So, I'm very proud of the work that I've done in my campaign and reaching out to people across the state of Texas. We got 43% of the vote in the March 1st primary, and we do have a runoff on May 24th. But it's time that we send somebody to a statewide position that reflects our communities, that knows what it's like, that cares about rural and urban communities, that knows what needs to get done, and has the experience not only of dealing with federal law and constitutional issues, but I know what it's like to be in court with somebody who's fighting possession of marijuana charge. I've done criminal defense work. I know how much of an impact it can have on someone's life. I know how hard it is to get child support. I've worked with clients, and I know that they're fighting for that, and I know how to interface with the AG's office. And I just know I know what people are going through. And I know what this position can do to improve their lives. So I hope I can gain all of your support. I vote on May 24th. I'm happy to answer questions, any specific questions that you all may have. But let's get it done, and we can actually do this. And I want folks to believe that. Because Ken Paxton only won by 50.6% in 2018. And we have the demographics, and we have investment, because I have been able to build a broad coalition of national organizations, statewide organizations, people across the state of Texas, and they're going to invest in this race because they know how critical it is to get him out. So I see a question.
All right, Jerome.
Ms. Garza, I want to thank you. When I was a young teenager, I heard the same speech from from a gentleman from East Dallas who was our Attorney General for 2 terms. So I believe in you. As Attorney General, tell us what could you do against the governor as he's trying to go against the Pilar versus Doe. Tell us what you could do.
So the question was on what could I do as the Attorney General to protect undocumented children in school and stop the governor from attacking Pilar versus Doe. As the Attorney General, so folks understand, it is an independent executive position. So it's not, my duty as the AG does not run to the governor or to lieutenant governor or to the legislature necessarily. It is to the people of Texas. So if there is something that is unconstitutional that is being presented, I would be able to issue opinions. I would be able to litigate, investigate, any of those, use the full powers of that office to stop bad actions like that. I also, I think it's important to think about the community aspect of what the AG can do, right? The AG can also work with affected communities and work with, with affected communities in order to address a lot of these issues. So, for example, workers' protections. So we can talk about workers' protections. I want to see a workers' protections bureau where we actually work with unions, we work with people that are affected by wage theft, by misclassification of their jobs, and bring people to the table and not only identifying issues, but identifying how do we address them. And that's what a people's attorney is going to be doing, is actually working with the people of Texas. And you can see this working in different states across the country where they have Democratic attorney generals. So that's why it's so critical. That's why this race is critical, because we can actually have somebody who cares about the people of Texas and is going to work hand in hand with them to improve everyone's lives.
Ray?
Sorry, hold on.
Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Ray de los Santos. I have the privilege of being the director for the LULAC National Education Service Centers here in Dallas. We're one of 6 regional service centers that LULAC maintains around the state. My basic question to you, I was going to ask very similar to the other one, so I was going to ask our high school students and any collegiate students that are here to please stand. And also then the question to you is, what message do you have for them? Because it's very depressing. Many of our students are immigrants, and they hear these messages of what's going on, not only with the abortion issue, but also the impact that it could have on future lawsuits, the in-state tuition bill, and all of that. What message do you have for the young people so that they can get that animo to continue going to school and doing the right things that they can do? High school students, college students, please stand so you can see who you are. Come on, stand up.
Well, I think the first step is actually being here. I mean, you all are you're engaged. You're here to listen and to see and get involved in the political process. I think that's the first step. But I think, I would start by saying you need to believe in yourself that you can actually make a difference. And I always go back to the Jane case because she was 17 and she knew what she wanted for herself, and she knew that she couldn't become a parent. And she fought through a month of obstruction. It took a month. The Trump administration forced her to be pregnant for a month while we fought in court. And that is the power of one person. And so I want you to see that in yourself, that you have the power to change your own life, you have the power to change others. Because, if you stand up for what you believe is right, you can really impact other people. So stay engaged, continue with your education, and continue with your convictions, because that's the only way we're going to change anything. And also demand more. Demand more of your elected officials. and speak up, because right now, I mean, what we're seeing with Roe and what we're seeing happen across the country in Texas, we need to demand more of our elected officials, and not just statewide, not just congressional. I'm talking from the city, from your ISD, from your teachers. You need to demand more from absolutely everyone around you. Because the only way that we're going to improve our lives, improve this country, this state, is by demanding more from everyone. So échale ganas, like keep going to school and know that you are worth everything. And don't ever let anyone tell you that my mom always used to tell me, you're no better